Hare Krishna, dear devotees, welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the live studios in Hythe, Kent, Southeast England, just next to the English Channel, otherwise known in Anglo-Saxon as the Haven. So here it is, the safe haven for your consciousness, for your ears, for your heart, as we read Srila Prabhupada's books together in the association of devotees who really like to read Srila Prabhupada's books. And it doesn't get any better than this. Hare Krishna. The taste, that's what we're looking for, the taste for hearing and chanting about Krishna. Okay, we have a part of the Sankirtan party here from London. Ananta Creeper Prabhu, Bhakti Eden, and my God, go ahead, say it. Sebastian, Dr. Sebastian, old man, losing memory. Hare Krishna, sorry. So let's get right into it, shall we? Yes. Srimad Bhagavatam Mahima Stotram, from Sri Krishna Lila Stava, texts 412 to 416, by Srila Sanatana Goswami, which is applicable to the Gita, which we're reading tonight. It goes like this. Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha, Sarva Vedaika Satpala, Sarva Siddhanta Ratnaja, Sarva Loktaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Prana, Srimad Bhagavata Prabho, Kali Dvandoditaditya, Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master, Srimad Bhagavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya, Prema Varshakshadayate, Sarvada Sarvasevyaya, Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you, who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin, Madguru Man Mahadana, Man Nistadaga Mad Bhagya, Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu, sadhu tadayin, adini chochatakada, anamunchagadachin mam, premna rit kantayokspuda. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we've heard the 4 seed verses from the Gita in chapter 10 and the glories of the vibhutis, the opulences of Krishna in the material world. We've heard how Arjuna was able to see the universal form of Krishna, and he proved that the two-armed form of the Lord is the source of everything, including the universal form. Now we've reached the last chapter of the 6 middle chapters of the Gita, which are the most confidential chapters. Chapter 12, Devotional Service. Bhakti-Yoga, pure devotional service to Lord Krishna, is the highest and most expedient means for attaining pure love for Krishna, which is the highest end of spiritual existence. Those who follow this supreme path develop divine qualities. Text 1. Arjuna Uvacha Evam Satata Yukta Ye Bhaktas Twang Paryupasate Ye Chap Yaksharama Bhyaktam Tesham Ke Yoga Vitamaha. Arjuna inquired, which are considered to be more perfect, those who are always properly engaged in your devotional service, or those who worship the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested? Purport. Krishna has now explained about the personal, the impersonal, and the universal, and has described all kinds of devotees and yogis. Generally, the transcendentalists can be divided into two classes. One is the impersonalist, and the other is the personalist. The personalist devotee engages himself with all energy in the service of the Supreme Lord. The impersonalist also engages himself not directly in the service of the Lord, of Krishna, but in meditation on the impersonal Brahman, the unmanifested. We find in this chapter that of the different processes for realization of the absolute truth, Bhakti-Yoga, devotional service, is the highest. If one at all desires to have the association of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he must take to devotional service. Those who worship the Supreme Lord directly by devotional service are called personalists. Those who engage themselves in meditation on the impersonal Brahman are called impersonalists. Arjuna is here questioning which position is better. There are different ways to realize the absolute truth, but Krishna indicates in this chapter that Bhakti Yoga, or devotional service to Him, is the highest of all. It is the most direct, and it is the easiest means for association with the Godhead. In the second chapter of Bhagavad-gita, the Supreme Lord explained that a living entity is not the material body. He is a spiritual spark, and the absolute truth is the spiritual whole. In the seventh chapter, he spoke of the living entity as being part and parcel of the Supreme Whole, and recommended that he transfer his attention fully to the whole. Then again, in the eighth chapter, it was said that anyone who thinks of Krishna at the time of quitting his body is at once transferred to the spiritual sky, to the abode of Krishna. And at the end of the sixth chapter, the Lord clearly said that of all yogis, one who always thinks of Krishna within himself is considered the most perfect. So in practically every chapter, the conclusion has been that one should be attached to the personal form of Krishna, for that is the highest spiritual realization. Nevertheless, there are those who are not attached to the personal form of Krishna. They are so firmly detached that even in the preparation of commentaries to Bhagavad-gita, they want to distract other people from Krishna and transfer all devotion to the impersonal Brahmajyoti. They prefer to meditate on the impersonal form of the Absolute Truth which is beyond the reach of the senses and is not manifest. And so, factually, there are two classes of transcendentalists. Now Arjuna is trying to settle the question of which process is easier and which of the classes is most perfect. In other words, he is clarifying his own position because he is attached to the personal form of Krishna. He is not attached to the impersonal Brahman. He wants to know whether his position is secure. The impersonalist manifestation, either in this material world or in the spiritual world of the Supreme Lord, is a problem for meditation. Actually, one cannot perfectly conceive of the impersonal feature of the Absolute Truth. Therefore, Arjuna wants to say, what is the use of such a waste of time? Arjuna experienced in the 11th chapter that to be attached to the personal form of Krishna is best, because he could understand all other forms at the same time, and there was no disturbance to his love for Krishna. This important question, asked of Krishna by Arjuna, will clarify the distinction between the impersonal and personal conceptions of the Absolute Truth. Text 2. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Mayavesha Mano Ye Mam Nitya Yukta Upasate Shraddhaya Padayopitas Te Me Yukta Tama Matama Mataha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, those who fix their minds on my personal form and are always engaged in worshiping me with great and transcendental faith are considered by me to be most perfect. Purport. In answer to Arjuna's question, Krishna clearly says that he who concentrates upon his personal form and who worships him with faith and devotion is to be considered most perfect in yoga. For one in such Krishna consciousness, there are no material activities, because everything is done for Krishna. A pure devotee is constantly engaged. Sometimes he chants, sometimes he hears or reads books about Krishna, or sometimes he cooks prasadam, or goes to the marketplace to purchase something for Krishna, or sometimes he washes the temple or the dishes. Whatever he does not let a single moment pass without devoting his activities to Krishna. Such action is in full samadhi. Text 3 and 4. Ye tvakshanamanirdesham avyaktam paryupasate sarvatra gam achintyam cha kutastam achalam dhruvam saniyam yendriyagramam sarvatra samabhudeyaha te prapnuvanti mameva sarvabhuta hite rataha. But those who fully worship the unmanifested, that which lies beyond the perception of the senses, the all-pervading, inconceivable, unchanging, fixed and immovable, the impersonal conception of the Absolute Truth, by controlling the various senses and being equally disposed to everyone, such persons engaged in the welfare of all at last achieve me. Purport. Those who do not directly worship the Supreme Godhead Krishna, but who attempt to achieve the same goal by an indirect process, also ultimately achieve the same goal, Sri Krishna. After many births, the man of wisdom seeks refuge in me, knowing that Vasudeva is all. When a person comes to full knowledge after many births, he surrenders unto Lord Krishna. If one approaches the Godhead by the method mentioned in this verse, he has to control the senses, render service to everyone, and engage in the welfare of all beings. It is inferred that one has to approach Lord Krishna, otherwise there is no perfect realization. Often there is much penance involved before one fully surrenders unto Him. In order to perceive the Supersoul within the individual soul, one has to cease the sensual activities of seeing, hearing, tasting, working, etc. Then one comes to understand that the Supreme Soul is present everywhere. Realizing this, one envies no living entity. He sees no difference between man and animal because he sees soul only, not the outer covering. But for the common man, this method of impersonal realization is very difficult. Text 5. Klesho dikatadas te sham abhyakta sakta chetasam abhyakta higatir dukam dehavadbir avapyate. For those whose minds are attached to the unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme, advancement is very troublesome. To make progress in that discipline is always difficult for those who are embodied. Purport. The group of transcendentalists who follow the path of the inconceivable, unmanifested, impersonal feature of the Supreme Lord are called Jnana Yogis. And persons who are in full Krishna consciousness, engaged in devotional service to the Lord, are called Bhakti Yogis. Now, here the difference between Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga is definitely expressed. The process of Jnana Yoga, although ultimately bringing one to the same goal, is very troublesome. Whereas the path of Bhakti Yoga, the process of being in direct service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is easier and is natural for the embodied soul. The individual soul is embodied since time immemorial. It is very difficult for him to simply theoretically understand that he is not the body. Therefore, the Bhakti Yogi accepts the deity of Krishna as worshipable because there is some bodily conception fixed in the mind, which can be thus applied. Of course, worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in His form within the temple is not idol worship. There is evidence in the Vedic literature that worship may be saguna and nirguna, of the Supreme possessing or not possessing attributes. Worship of the deity in the temple is saguna worship, for the Lord is represented by material qualities, but the form of the Lord, though represented by material qualities, such as stone, wood, or oil paint, is not actually material. That is the absolute nature of the Supreme Lord. A crude example may be given here. We may find some mailboxes on the street, and if we post our letters in those boxes, they will naturally go to their destination without difficulty. But any old box or an imitation which we may find somewhere, but which is not authorized by the post office, will not do the work. Similarly, God has an authorized representation in the deity form, which is called Archa Vigraha. This Archa Vigraha is an incarnation of the Supreme Lord. God will accept service through that form. The Lord is omnipotent, all-powerful. Therefore, by His incarnation as Archa Vigraha, he can accept the services of the devotee just to make it convenient for the man in conditioned life. So for a devotee, there is no difficulty in approaching the Supreme immediately and directly. But for those who are following the impersonal way to spiritual realization, the path is difficult. They have to understand the unmanifested representation of the Supreme through such Vedic literatures as the Upanishads, and they have to learn the language, understand the non-perceptual feelings, and realize all these processes. This is not very easy for a common man. A person in Krishna consciousness, engaged in devotional service, simply by the guidance of the bona fide spiritual master, simply by offering regulative obeisances unto the deity, simply by hearing the glories of the Lord, and simply by eating the remnants of foodstuffs offered to the Lord, realizes the Supreme Personality of Godhead very easily. There is no doubt that the impersonalists are unnecessarily taking a troublesome path with the risk of not realizing the absolute truth at the ultimate end. But the personalist, without any risk, trouble, or difficulty, approaches the Supreme Personality directly. A similar passage appears in Srimad Bhagavatam. It is stated there that if one ultimately has to surrender under the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this surrendering process is called bhakti, but instead takes the trouble to understand what is Brahman and what is not Brahman, and spends his whole life in that way. The result is simply troublesome. Therefore it is advised here that no one should take up this troublesome path of self-realization, because there is uncertainty in the ultimate result. A living entity is eternally an individual soul, and if he wants to merge into the spiritual whole, he may accomplish the realization of the eternal and knowledgeable aspects of his original nature, but the blissful portion is not realized. By the grace of some devotee, such a transcendentalist, highly learned in the process of Jnana Yoga, may come to the point of Bhakti-Yoga, or devotional service. At that time, long practice in impersonalism also becomes a source of trouble, because he cannot give up the idea. Therefore, an embodied soul is always in difficulty with the unmanifest, both at the time of practice and at the time of realization. Every living soul is partially independent, and one should know for certain that this unmanifested realization is against the nature of his blissful, spiritual, blissful self. One should not take up this process. For every individual living entity, the process of Krishna consciousness, which entails full engagement in devotional service, is the best way. If one wants to ignore this devotional service, there is the danger of turning to atheism. Thus, the process of centering attention on the unmanifested, the inconceivable, which is beyond the approach of the senses, as already expressed in this verse, should never be encouraged at any time, especially in this age. It is not advised by Lord Krishna. Text 6 and 7. Ye tu sarvani karmani mayi sanyasya matparaha ananyevaiva yogena mam jayanta upasate tesham aham samudarta mrityu sangsara sagarat bhavami na chirat partha maya veshita chetasam. But those who worship me, giving up all their activities unto me, and being devoted to me without deviation, engaged in devotional service, and always meditating upon me, having fixed their minds upon me, O son of Pritha, for them I am the swift deliverer from the ocean of birth and death. Purport. It is explicitly stated here that the devotees are very fortunate to be delivered very soon from material existence by the Lord. In pure devotional service, one comes to the realization that God is great and that the individual soul is subordinate to Him. His duty is to render service to the Lord, and if he does not, then he will render service to Maya. As stated before, the Supreme Lord can be appreciated only by devotional service. Therefore, one should be fully devoted. One should fix his mind fully on Krishna in order to achieve Him. One should work only for Krishna. It does not matter in what kind of work one engages, but that work should be done only for Krishna. That is the standard of devotional service. The devotee does not desire any achievement other than pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. His life's mission is to please Krishna, and he can sacrifice everything for Krishna's satisfaction. Just as Arjuna did in the battle of Kurukshetra. The process is very simple. One can devote himself in his occupation and engage at the same time in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Such transcendental chanting attracts the devotee to the personality of Godhead. The Supreme Lord herein promises that without delay He will deliver a pure devotee, thus engaged from the ocean of material existence. Those who are advanced in yoga practice can willfully transfer the soul to whatever planet they like by the yoga process, and others take the opportunity in various ways. But as far as the devotee is concerned, it is clearly stated here that the Lord Himself takes him. The devotee does not need to wait to become very experienced in order to transfer himself to the spiritual sky. In the Varaha Purana, this verse appears. Nayami paramam sthanam achyuradi gatim vina garuda skandam aropya yatecham anivartitaha. The purport of this verse is that the devotee does not need to practice Ashtanga Yoga in order to transfer his soul to the spiritual planets. The responsibility is taken by the Supreme Lord Himself. He clearly states here that He Himself becomes the deliverer. A child is completely cared for by his parents, and thus his position is secure. Similarly, a devotee does not need to endeavor to transfer himself by yoga practice to other planets. Rather, the Supreme Lord, by His great mercy, comes at once, riding on His bird carrier, Garuda, and at once delivers the devotee from material existence. Although a man who has fallen in the ocean may struggle very hard and may be very expert in swimming, he cannot save himself. But if someone comes and picks him up from the water, then he is easily rescued. Similarly, the Lord picks up the devotee from this material existence. One simply has to practice the easy process of Krishna consciousness and fully engage himself in devotional service. Any intelligent man should prefer the process of devotional service to all other paths. In the Narayaniya, this is confirmed as follows. Ya vai sadhana sampati purushartha chatushtaye taya vina tadapnoti nado narayanashrayaha. The purport of this verse is that one should not engage in the different processes of fruitive activity or cultivate knowledge by the mental speculative process. One who is devoted to the Supreme Personality can attain all the benefits derived from other yoga processes, speculation, rituals, sacrifices, charities, etc. That is the specific benediction of devotional service. Simply by chanting the holy name of Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. A devotee of the Lord can approach the supreme destination easily and happily, but this destination cannot be approached by any other process of religion. The conclusion of Bhagavad-gita is stated in the 18th chapter, Sarvadharman Parityajya Mamekang Sharanam Vraja Aham Tvam Sarvapapebhyo Mokshayishami Ma Shuchaha. One should give up all other processes of self-realization and simply execute devotional service in Krishna consciousness. That will enable one to reach the highest perfection of life. There is no need for one to consider the sinful actions of his past life, because the Supreme Lord fully takes charge of him. Therefore, one should not futilely try to deliver himself in spiritual realization. Let everyone take shelter of the Supreme, Omnipotent Godhead, Krishna. That is the highest perfection of life. Text 8. Mai eva mana adatsva mai buddhim niveshaya nivishasyashi mayeva ata urdvam nasangshayaha. Just fix your mind upon me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and engage all your intelligence in me. Thus you will live in me, always, without a doubt. Purport. One who is engaged in Lord Krishna's devotional service lives in a direct relationship with the Supreme Lord, so there is no doubt that his position is transcendental from the very beginning. A devotee does not live on the material plane. He lives in Krishna. The holy name of the Lord and the Lord are non-different. Therefore, when a devotee chants Hare Krishna, Krishna and his internal potency are dancing on the tongue of the devotee. When he offers Krishna food, Krishna directly accepts those eatables. And when the devotee becomes Krishna-ized by eating the remnants, and the devotee becomes Krishna-ized by eating the remnants. One who does not engage in such service cannot understand how this is so, although this is a process recommended in the Bhagavad-gita and in other Vedic literatures. Text 9. Atat chitam samadhatum na shokshnoshi mayistiram abhyasa yogina tato mam ichchaptum dhananjaya. My dear Arjuna, winner of wealth, if you cannot fix your mind upon me without deviation, then follow the regulated principles of Bhakti-Yoga. In this way, develop a desire to attain me. Purport. In this verse, two different processes of Bhakti-Yoga are indicated. The first applies to one who has actually developed an attachment for Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by transcendental love. And the other is for one who has not developed an attachment for the Supreme Person by transcendental love. For this second class, there are different prescribed rules and regulations one can follow to be ultimately elevated to the stage of attachment to Krishna. Bhakti Yoga is the purification of the senses. At the present moment, in material existence, the senses are always impure, being engaged in sense gratification. But by the practice of Bhakti Yoga, these senses can become purified, and in the purified state, they come directly in contact with the Supreme Lord. In this material existence, I may be engaged in some service to some master, but I don't really lovingly serve my master. I simply serve to get some money. And the master also is not in love. He takes service from me and pays me. So there's no question of love. But for spiritual life, one must be elevated to the pure stage of love. That stage of love can be achieved by practice of devotional service performed with the present senses. This love of God is now in a dormant state in everyone's heart. And there, love of God is manifested in different ways. But he is contaminated by material association. Now the heart has to be purified of the material association, and that dormant, natural love for Krishna has to be revived. That is the whole process. To practice the regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga, one should, under the guidance of an expert spiritual master, follow certain principles. One should rise early in the morning, take bath, enter the temple, offer prayers, and chant Hare Krishna, then collect flowers to offer to the deity, cook foodstuffs to offer to the deity, take prasadam, and so on. There are various rules and regulations which one should follow, and one should constantly hear Bhagavad-gita and Srimad Bhagavatam from pure devotees. This practice can help anyone rise to the level of love of God, and then he is sure of his progress into the spiritual kingdom of God. This practice of Bhakti Yoga, under the rules and regulations, with the direction of a spiritual master, will surely bring one to the stage of love of God. Text 10. Abhyase pyasamarto si madva karma paramo bhava mad artham api karmani kurvan siddhim avapsyasi. If you cannot practice the regulations of Bhakti Yoga, then just try to work for me. Because by working for me, you will come to the perfect stage. Purport. One who is not able even to practice the regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga under the guidance of a spiritual master can still be drawn to this perfectional stage by working for the Supreme Lord. How to do this work has already been explained in the 55th verse of the 11th chapter. One should be sympathetic to the propagation of Krishna consciousness. There are many devotees who are engaged in the propagation of Krishna consciousness, and they require help. So even if one cannot directly practice the regulated principles of Bhakti Yoga, he can try to help such work. Every endeavor requires land, capital, organization, and labor. Just as in business, one requires a place to stay, some capital to use, some labor, and some organization to expand. So the same is required in the service of Krishna. The only difference is that in materialism, one works for sense gratification. The same work, however, can be performed for the satisfaction of Krishna, and that is spiritual activity. If one has sufficient money, he can help in building an office or temple for propagating Krishna consciousness, or he can help with publications. There are various fields of activity, and one should be interested in such activities. If one cannot sacrifice the results of his activities, the same person can still sacrifice some percentage to propagate Krishna consciousness. This voluntary service to the cause of Krishna consciousness will help one rise to a higher state of love for God, whereupon one becomes perfect. Text 11. Ataitad apisaktosi, ataitad apyashaktosi, kartum mad yogamashritaha, sarva karma palatyagam, tatakuru yatatmavan. If, however, you are unable to work in this consciousness of me, then try to act giving up all results of your work and try to be self-situated. Purport. It may be that one is unable even to sympathize with the activities of Krishna consciousness because of social, familial, or religious considerations, or because of some other impediments. If one attaches himself directly to the activities of Krishna consciousness, there may be objections from family members or so many other difficulties. For one who has such a problem, it is advised that he sacrifice the accumulated result of his activities to some good cause. Such procedures are described in the Vedic rules. There are many descriptions of sacrifices and special functions for the full moon day, and there are special work in which the result of one's previous action can be applied. Thus one, did I read all of that? Yeah, I got it all. Thus one may gradually become elevated to the state of knowledge. It is also found that one who is not even interested in the activities of Krishna consciousness gives charity to some hospital or some other social institution, he gives up the hard-earned results of his activities. That is also recommended here, because by the practice of giving up the fruits of one's activities, one is sure to purify his mind gradually, and in that purified stage of mind, one becomes able to understand Krishna consciousness. Of course, Krishna consciousness is not dependent on any other experience, because Krishna consciousness itself can purify one's mind. But if there are impediments to accepting Krishna consciousness, one may try to give up the results of his actions. In that respect, social service, community service, national service, sacrifice for one's country, and so on, may be accepted, so that someday one may come to the stage of pure devotional service to the Supreme Lord. In Bhagavad-gita 1846, we find it stated, Yatak pravritir bhutanam. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he does not know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come gradually to understand that Krishna is the supreme cause by the sacrificial method. Text 12. Shreyo hi jnanam abhyasaj jnanad jnanam vishishyate jnanad karma pala tyagas tyagach chantir anantaram. If you cannot take to this process, then engage yourself in the cultivation of knowledge. Better than knowledge, however, is meditation. And better than meditation is renunciation of the fruits of action. For by such renunciation, one can attain peace of mind. Purport. As mentioned in the previous verses, there are two kinds of devotional service: the way of regulative principles and the way of full attachment in love to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For those who are not actually able to follow the principles of Krishna consciousness, it is better to cultivate knowledge, because by knowledge one can be able to understand his real position. Gradually, knowledge will develop to the point of meditation. By meditation, one can be able to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead by a gradual process. In the cultivation of knowledge, there are processes which make one understand that one himself is the Supreme, and that sort of meditation is preferred if one is unable to engage in devotional service. If one is not able to meditate in such a way, then there are prescribed duties, as enjoined in the Vedic literature, for the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras, which we shall find in the last chapter of Bhagavad-gita. But in all cases, one should give up the result or fruits of labor. This means to employ the result of karma for some good cause. In summary, to reach the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal, there are two processes. One is by gradual development, and the other process is direct. Devotional service in Krishna consciousness is the direct method, and the other method involves renouncing the fruits of one's activities. Then one can come to the stage of knowledge, then to the stage of meditation, then to the stage of understanding the Supersoul, and then to the stage of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. One may take either the step-by-step process or the direct path. The direct process is not possible for everyone, therefore the indirect process is also good. It is, however, to be understood that the indirect process is not recommended for Arjuna, because he is already at the stage of loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. It is for others who are not at this stage. For them, the gradual process of renunciation, knowledge, meditation, and realization of the Supersoul and Brahman should be followed. But as far as Bhagavad-gita is concerned, it is the direct method that is stressed. Everyone is advised to take to the direct method and surrender unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So we'll stop our reading for tonight there and open up the conversations to reflections, discussion, whatever has stuck in your mind about this reading today, which is a very important reading. It's all important, but this is particularly important. Hare Krishna. Yes, Bhakti Eden has the mic.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for that reading.
Hare Krishna, Bhakti Eden, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. I just had a little reflection, just seeing this whole yoga ladder and all the different stages, and having been through some of them myself, it's just really nice to see. But what I've realized is that sort of there was that purport from yesterday talking about giving in charity to Krishna conscious related activities is the best type of charity, and just realizing that now that we're on the front lines and we're doing book distribution and things like this, actually it's really important for us to engage that charity or engage whatever's been given directly in devotional service, because in doing so, then the benefit is also given to all the people who are actually giving this charity and are participating in that way. So it's actually a really fortunate position to be engaged directly in devotional service.
Absolutely.
So that was my little reflection.
Absolutely. And I might add that it's interesting, isn't it, how Krishna starts with just fix your mind on me and don't let it go to anything else. Topmost stage. And from there he goes to regulated principles of Bhakti-Yoga, which we're doing. Then working for Krishna, which we are also doing. Then giving up the fruits of the work, which we are also doing. Then cultivating knowledge, which we're also doing. Contemplating. Meditation is the same as contemplating, which we're also doing. And giving up the fruits again, which brings us right back to the verse before. So it goes backwards. Krishna presents it backwards, the topmost thing first. Then it's progressive. And in this way, every person on the earth can be in the process of Krishna consciousness. You know? There's two aspects of material existence, vidya and avidya. The avidya aspect of Maya, or material energy, takes us away from the truth. And vidya takes us toward the truth. So this is what is meant by cultivating knowledge. Cultivation of knowledge means you want to know more and more. And if you do it honestly, it will gradually take you through the different stages of education and knowledge, and you will come to the point of understanding that this is not satisfying me. And then that vidya takes us to the point of questioning, why am I not satisfied after all these things I've done? Or why am I still suffering? Or why do I have to get old? Why do I have to die? I don't want those things. So in that way, there's the cultivation of knowledge brings us to the point of eventually giving up the fruits, because we can see that the more we try to get the fruits for ourselves, the more agitated our senses and our mind become, and we cannot be peaceful. But if you give up the fruits, you begin to feel some peace, just like your mother taught you. Better to give than to receive. That's the cornerstone of detachment, actually. And that way our mothers are actually our first gurus, whether we know it or not, or whether we knew it or not, as we were being first raised. So this whole, like you said, it's a ladder, but it's all connected together. And what connects it together is honesty and sincerity. If you're honest and sincere, then each one of those processes will take you to the next one. And gradually it takes you to the point of wanting to know more about the absolute truth, and then more about Krishna, ultimately Krishna. Hare Krishna. Anything else? Yes. Sebastian's got something. Sebastian's got something on his mind. Go ahead.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for this reading, and for reading my mind as well. in text number 9, there's a really nice paragraph where it's about the master and the servant, and in the material world, the master is not in love and the servant is not in love. There's no question of love, and just I want some money from you and I give you some money, and it's business exchange and
merchants.
it's yeah. Yeah, just this. Can you comment on this one?
Yeah, business means profit, and everybody's trying to get profit from everybody else and at the expense of everybody else, So Krishna, he is the supreme businessman. You will never do business with him. You cannot do business with him because he owns everything. He is everything in a sense. So there's no renunciation means, giving up something. But if it didn't belong to us in the first place, where's the question of renunciation? Therefore, this business mentality is really false. It's really useless. It doesn't get us anywhere. Therefore, we should give it up. We should give up the merchant's mentality and think that we can do business with Krishna. Make Krishna our order supplier. And then when we get well situated materially, then we give him up. It happens. It happens all the time, every day. A person will come to Krishna consciousness in some kind of suffering condition or poverty or so many reasons. And they come to Krishna consciousness, get themselves a little bit more straightened out, a little healthier, a little money, a little security, and then, whoop, they're gone. Because there was ulterior motive. So at the root of this merchant mentality, this business mentality, is selfish interests. Therefore, as Eden just said, the willingness, the desire, the tendency to want to give, this is what needs to be cultivated. That will conquer this business mentality, this servile mentality, this cheating mentality, actually. Hare Krishna. Ananta Kripa is going to give us some reflections and enlighten us. Go ahead, please.
Hare Krishna, Guru Maharaj. Thank you again for the reading. I really like this part of the Bhagavad-Gita also. I remember reading it a few months ago. And I really like the purport of text 5. And I was really appreciating the purport of Srila Prabhupada. And I was just thinking when we were reading some part of it that how actually when the conditioned soul just get in touch with Srila Prabhupada's books, she just open it and just everything become revealed.
Yes.
And she can actually, she has the most fortunate events happen in a whole struggle after lifetime. And just discovering this transcendental purport. And then in text 5, at the end, Srila Prabhupada mentioned that about the impersonalist, or the Gyan yogis, and he said for them it's really, really difficult. It's a path full of risk. And it's very difficult to turn them into, to make them appreciate the Bhakti-Yoga. So what's the best way to preach to them, or to make them more favorable?
Well, I think that's why the verses that follow that explain, as you were talking about, as Eden was talking about, the ladder, the stages of devotional service, and cultivation of knowledge. That's why it says in that verse, in the next verse, that, or maybe it was the previous verse, that says that those who are serious about it, those who are actually fully devoted to the impersonal path, will come to Krishna consciousness eventually. But the point that's being made is it will take a very long time. Bahunam Gyanavanam te. Bahunam means many births. Bahunam Gyanavanam te. Gyanavan mam prapadyate. Gyanavan mam prapadyate. I can't remember all the lines right off my head, but it means that after many, many births of cultivating that kind of knowledge, one comes to the point that Krishna is everything. And that's a rare soul. So, in one of the purports it described that the indirect path is not being advised to Arjuna, because he's already a devotee. So imagine the kind of mercy that we're getting from Srila Prabhupada and from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. We're being given this knowledge immediately from the beginning, especially to those of us who were in search of truth. But even coming right up the street, we're being given this knowledge. So the gratitude that should be in our hearts for that, and what we've been relieved from, should, what can I say? It should make us more than obliged. It should make us indentured, fully in gratitude, willing to pay back, willing to pay back what the gift that we've been given. And the best way to do that is to give it to others, because that's what pleases Krishna the most. From whatever position we're in, anything that we can do to push that mission forward will work. But this process that Prabhupada has given us of giving his books out to others, there's nothing better than this. In my personal experience in life, over 50 years, almost 50 years, just under 50 years of devotional service, there's nothing like giving these books out to people and explaining them to people and bringing other people to Krishna consciousness somehow or other. This is the real retreat. This is the marathon retreat, the thing that needs to be brought into the focus, and embraced, and the urgency of the thing, especially in the world today. What's going on in the world today is madness. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Anybody out there in cyberspace?
First is from Bhakti-Yoga.
Haribo Rati, Hare Krishna.
She says, Jai Guru Maharaj, the favorite chapter.
Yes.
And from Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Haribo Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
She says, Hare Krishna, dear Maharaj and all assembled sages. Jai Ho, the news of the Lord. All glories to your daily reading service of Srila Prabhupada's books.
Beats the newspapers any day. Hare Krishna.
All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jaya, glories to Prabhupada.
And from Bhaktamatsu.
Haribo Bhaktamatsu.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Wow, what a chapter. It's amazing how reading Prabhupada's books just keeps getting sweeter and sweeter infinitely.
Yes.
I was curious, Maharaj, by what symptoms can we recognize sadhu kripa in our lives? How can we understand that we are receiving mercy from the devotees?
Hang in there for a few more verses, and Krishna will answer that question directly. Because Arjuna asked that same question to Krishna. How can one be known who's actually doing this? And then the last 8 chapters, last 8 verses. So I don't have time. It's a very deep subject, but Krishna will deal with it, tomorrow or the next day. So be patient. There's a specific, direct answer from Krishna, which I don't want to interfere with, so I'll wait till we get there. Hare Krishna.
And from Gopal Roy.
Oh, Haribol Gopal Roy, Hare Krishna.
He says, Dear Maharaj, what signs or mentalities would appear, and by which we would understand that our devotional service is affected by karma or jnana? Your servant Gopal Roy. Das.
Well, if you're attached to the fruits, if you're attached to the results for yourself, if you're too agitated when you don't get the result, if you're not giving the result to Krishna, then you're attached to the result for yourself. Of course, there is the desire to do nicely for Krishna, and you don't do nicely, then you're thinking, I'm not doing nicely for Krishna. That's a tangential point. It's a tangential point. But the difference is that when we get agitated, then we stop doing the service. Or our service spirit becomes diminished. Our eagerness, our enthusiasm it wanes. And the speculative side is if we're always trying to figure out ourselves, not taking shelter of the guidance from the books and the guidance from senior devotees, if you're not taking advantage of that, then also your service attitude will be negatively affected. Hare Krishna.
He says, P.S. We are having a wonderful marathon so far.
Oh boy, I tell you, I can imagine. I just can imagine. When all of you guys were in the room here, the effulgence was too much, just like today and yesterday with the Sankirtan devotees from London. Oh, such a nice atmosphere. Hare Krishna. The effulgence is palpable.
From Bhakti-Rupa.
Haribol Bhakti-Rupa.
He says, Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for reading. Beautiful chapter. Really love text 6 and 7 verse and purport. If we focus on Krishna, then he takes care of everything else very soon.
Yeah, because again, this ladder that Bhakti Eden started our conversation with, each time you get a little purified. You try to get knowledge, and then as you get the knowledge, then the things that didn't work get kind of go into the past, and you get purified, and you try different things, and by the process of elimination, you gradually get to the point of giving up fruits to others, helping others. So one leads to another. The danger is, though, in the material world, because it's so powerful, the material energy, you will get stuck in one of those stages. So that's why Krishna puts it all together in this chapter, so you can see that it has to be done progressively, spiritually progressively. So each stage comes to the point where I'm more peaceful now. Now I'm understanding, I can see more clearly with that peaceful mind. And then each stage takes us closer and closer to the point where we want Krishna. We want to be with Krishna. We want to serve Krishna in love. Hare Krishna.
Next is from Vilas Manjari.
Haribo Vilas Manjari, she's in Australia.
She says, Dear Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. Such solace to hear your reading. Thank you so much. I'm caring for my seriously unwell father and have missed a few live sessions, but it's so soothing to be here again.
Well wishes to your father. May he take full advantage of your Sangha, your association. I know I had a mother that I went to take care of, and she ended up being a devotee. Hare Krishna. By your association. May it happen.
And she also quoted this. If one decides to sacrifice for the supreme cause, even if he doesn't know that the supreme cause is Krishna, he will come to the standard of devotional service.
Yes.
Prabhupada Marathon Ki Jai.
Jai Ho.
All glories to the devotees out there engaging others in devotional service.
Yes, all glories to the Sankirtan warriors.
And from Rati Manjari.
Haribo Rati.
She says, Dear Guru Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. In this chapter, I really like the inviting and magnanimous mood of Srila Prabhupada, offering many suggestions of how people can participate in the Krishna consciousness movement. It is so beautiful to see his compassion in action. He must have known that most people around him were unqualified to perform service to the Supreme Person, and yet he is offering the opportunity left and right.
Absolutely. We owe everything to him. Hare Krishna.
And one more comment from her. She says, in a similar way, Lord Krishna is also offering different levels of service to him, very magnanimously. This liberal and encouraging attitude of Lord Krishna has attracted me since the very beginning of my attempts at Krishna consciousness. Krishna is the supreme, and actually he deserves the best, but still he accepts our imperfect and mixed attempts at approaching him, just to pull us closer. Truly loving and broad-minded he is.
Yes. This is Lord Chaitanya. But still, he wants us back with him. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakti-Rupa, he says, feel grateful to get access to this knowledge. Each marathon feels like another step on a ladder, each year building on the realizations of the previous. Very nice to be marathoning again, back in the fast lane.
Back in the fast lane. Very good. Another point that came into my mind while we were talking about the marathon earlier was that even though if we're not completely eligible for spontaneous devotional service, this marathon spirit, the sense of urgency and the intensity of the marathon helps us to come to that point of being spontaneously attracted to devotional service. It brings out in us, it brings it out in us. Yeah. You know, so many devotees have gone away over the years, thinking they want something higher. You know, they want to go to Radha Kund and jump in, and etc., etc. But all the books, including the Nectar of Instruction, which ends up in jumping into Radha Kund, there's so many verses beforehand that one has to actually assimilate to get there. So Prabhupada, Rupa Goswami, Prabhupada representing Rupa Goswami representing Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. It's all there. It's all there. Yeah. Hare Krishna. I thank you very much, everyone, for your kind reflections and discussions. Sri Bhagavad-gita, Srimad Bhagavad-gita As It Is, Ki Jai. Samabeda Bhaktivedanta Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic, as Krishna unfolds the process of devotional service to its conclusion. Hare Krishna. See you tomorrow night. Hari Bol.